Our State of the U.S. segment tonight, President Obama told Americans on Tuesday during his farewell speech that race remains a potent and divisive force in our nation. No matter what people say, according to our president, race relations are better than they were 10 years ago. Take a look.
There's a second threat to our democracy, and this one is as old as our nation itself. After my election, there was talk of a post-racial America. And such a vision, however well intended, was never realistic. Race remains a potent and often divisive force in our society. Now, I've lived long enough to know that race relations are better than they were 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, no matter what some folks say. You can see it not just in statistics, you see it in the attitudes of young Americans across the political spectrum. But we're not where we need to be. And all of us have more work to do.
Joining me now, senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum, Patrice Lee. Patrice, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Liz.
All right, Patrice, let me put this to you quite bluntly. I asked about it in the introduction. I just want you to answer, if you will, this claim from Obama of whether or not race relations, in your opinion, have improved since he became president.
I don't think they have. I mean, let's look at the polling. And when President Obama was first elected, Black Americans, 60% thought that race relations were bad. That number dropped, but then 7 years later, 7 years into his presidency, the numbers have increased to 68% of Black Americans. So, you know, there are improvements, don't want to deny that, but America is no more united from a racial standpoint, an economic standpoint, a philosophical standpoint than before he was elected.
Right. I don't even think that's exclusive to race. I mean, just ideologically, politically, it seems like our country's at a very divisive point in our nation's history. But let me ask you this then. What is he using to draw that conclusion? Because I am interested if he has something behind that claim or if he's just trying to cement his legacy that may differ a bit from reality.
Well, maybe he's comparing his presidency to, you know, the 1950s and the 1960s when blacks faced, you know, real segregation, real discrimination in lots of areas. You know, we don't face those same hurdles that we did in the 1960s. And so it is important that he recognizes that. But then let's look forward to today. I mean, when we look at the past year, the kind of rhetoric from the White House all the way down that has pitted Americans against one another, I can't understand how he thinks that he was the great unifier that we were expecting. And you know, it's amazing. You know, I, along with my friends, my peers, my family members, you know, said, this is historic. I never thought I would see the first Black African-American president in U.S. history. And there was hope that he would be able to, you know, bring up race, but not make it all about race. And I think he's inserted himself in lots of different episodes to bring up race, but then ignored some of the real issues affecting the Black community, like unemployment, like criminal justice, like, you know, security and safety. Those are issues that he never really touched in his presidency. And even people from the NAACP have agreed that, you know, 8 years later, blacks have retrogressed compared to the rest of the country.
Right, because I think you're right. Instead of having that frank discussion and saying, hey, I've been there, I've seen this, you know, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to talk about it, this is how we need to be able to address this. I mean, he's come down opposing some of these situations, these police-involved shootings. He's not supported police officers here before the facts, before the trial has happened, and he's come down on the side of the victims, as tragic as they were, that may have been in the wrong in these situations. But I guess one of the phrases that he used in this statement was he said that race relations are better than they were 10 years ago. I mean, Patrice, that was 2006, 2007 was 10 years ago. We didn't see any Black Lives Matter protests, any riots. I mean, we saw nothing like Ferguson or Charlotte or Milwaukee 10 years ago. So unless I'm missing something, like I said, and please correct me if I am, unless I'm missing something, I just don't see that's a valid comparison.
I think you're hitting on something there. We have seen an uprising in social protest during his presidency, and maybe a lot of people who who felt like they didn't have a voice feel empowered to, and I think his administration has done a lot to empower that. But at the same time, let's not deny the numbers of the murder rates in the Black community. They have actually skyrocketed during his presidency. That has not been made very much of. And while I totally support criminal justice reform and think that there are ways that we need to ensure there's trust restored between law enforcement and communities of colors or all communities, let's not pit them against one another. And also, let's not ignore the violence that happens in Black communities every single day. I mean, what's sad is that the narrative has been changed to either you're against police or you're for police. No, we want to ensure that every American feels safe at home, and we want to support law enforcement, and we want to bring reforms where reforms are needed. That's the unifying message that I was looking to President Obama to deliver. He had a great opportunity, and he didn't really execute on it.
Right, and I think I want to go back to something you said before, and that's people feeling more empowered to be able to speak out, people feeling more empowered that they can, engage in they should be peaceful protests. Sometimes they have evolved into riots here, but being able to engage in peaceful protests, some of these protesters, they say, I want to hear my voice heard. President Obama had the opportunity here to listen to them. He had the opportunity to hear the needs of the Black Lives Matter movement. They were saying, our people, young Black men are getting gunned down by police officers. They're being targeted because of their skin color. He had the opportunity to say, we're hearing you. We're doing the studies to see if this is in fact true. And then once the studies have been produced, as they were by Harvard professor Roland Fryer, saying, no, that's not actually correct. Here are the problems that we need to address in criminal justice reform and de-escalation tactics, in relations between, police departments and minority communities. But the actual claim that you're saying, we heard you, and it's not in fact true, and he missed that opportunity.
I think he did, and that's a squandered opportunity. As a result, now the next president is going to have to clean up the mess between the Obama administration, and law enforcement. And I think we've seen some different things in the past few days coming out from the Obama administration that again is fueling the fire instead of putting out the fire and bringing communities and law enforcement together. I'm looking forward. I had high hopes, and criminal justice reform was the one issue in Washington D.C. where there was bipartisan support. President Obama was not able to advance that ball over the goal line, and I hope that we can see in the next Congress and with the next administration that ball is advanced, because we want to see every community have opportunity restored to them, and we want to see law enforcement and communities working together, not working apart.
Right, because like you said before, our nation is not a nation of segregation. We're not a nation of different communities, different demographics that needed to be treated differently. We're a nation of equality, of equal law and justice for every person, regardless of their race. And that's what I'd like to see coming next too. Patrice, we're out of time, but thank you so much for being here. All right, guys, you know the drill. Talk to me. Tweet Liz_Wheeler. We'll meet you back here in just a minute.